that actually began at Tom Collegiate, where he was the junior coach for 6 seasons. Now, in his time at Balfour, Glen's teams qualified for the city championships an astonishing 21 times, winning 9 crowns, 4 provincial banners, and 2 LIT titles. Many of his players have gone on to have tremendous success at the university level. Players like Whit Hornsberger, Levi Van, Rob Thompson, John Salgado, Paul Schubach, Brennan Schwartz, Rhett Burgess, Scott Goebel, Bill Johnson, even Glen's own son Brad, all going on to enjoy fine careers at the CIS level. Teal Orban, most recognizable as one of the best quarterbacks to play in the CIS, was a standout basketball player for Glen's team as a senior, winning a provincial championship in consecutive seasons in both 2003 and again in 2004. Now, when Glen arrived at Balfour in the mid-'80s, basketball at the school was suffering. He had fewer than a dozen players try out in his first season as coach, although that does make cuts a little bit easier to navigate. But it wouldn't take very long for Glen to turn things around, as Balfour made an appearance in the provincial championships in the following season. Glen initiated the Balfour Junior and Senior Basketball Classics, both of which would go on to become marquee tournaments on the Regina High School sports calendar. Glen's tournaments were must-see, must-do events, and as much as he understood the importance of putting on a showcase event, he also understood that the Balfour Classic provided his athletes with an opportunity to test themselves against some of the very best teams in the province. And it certainly didn't hurt his feelings at all if he was labeled as a poor host by winning his own tournament, something that his teams did on 7 occasions, most recently in 2010. Not surprisingly, Balfour chose to rename their senior tournament in Glen's honor in 2015, following his retirement from teaching. In addition to his time at Balfour, over the years, Glen found time to devote to the development of basketball at other levels as well, coaching at Ethel Milliken School, numerous Regina Community Basketball Association teams, a stint as an assistant coach at the University of Regina, and instructing at countless camps and clinics. Glen has received multiple awards over the years from both the Regina and Saskatchewan High School Athletic Associations. He served on the Regina High School Athletic Association board, including a 7-year stint as president, was president of Basketball Saskatchewan and director of various tournaments. Before he was a standout coach, he was a pretty good basketball player himself, coached by Lauren Aston at Sheldon Williams Collegiate. He won a city championship in 1974 before joining the University of Regina Cougars, where he played from 1975 through 1979, and was named by the University of Regina's athletic department to their 10th anniversary All-Star team in 1984. Now, as much as all the wins and all the titles are nice, Glen has always maintained that for him, the connection that he makes with his athletes is what has motivated him over the years. He is on record as having said that the most rewarding aspect of a life dedicated to coaching is when a former player comes back and tells him that playing high school basketball was one of the greatest times of their lives. And judging by the number of former players in attendance here tonight, Glen, it is clear that you have made a difference in the lives of many. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the newest member of the Regina Sports Hall of Fame, Glen Fekula.
It's always good when a former basketball coach has to live out his dreams now with a pebble skin portfolio, because you can't get in the gym anymore, so this is as close as it gets here, so that's why I carry it close to my heart here. It's always also nice too when you have a bunch of pictures for you here about your career, and some of them are in black and white. That makes you feel young. Anyway, also, how old do you feel when one of the other Hall of Fame nominees calls you Mr. Fekula? I'm going. Anyway, the mustache. Eh? So Kathy Glasser phones me and goes, "We need a picture of for the thing," and I said, "Okay," and I kind of procrastinated a couple days, and I go, "Okay," and he had a head and shoulder shot. Okay. So for 35 years, I took school pictures along with the students, right? So you think I could find 35 of those little plastic things got to be in the house somewhere, or I don't know. Anyway, I came up with this one and go, that's about mid-career, about 1999 in there. I had the stash, and let's go with it. So the story of the stash and why I don't have it anymore is when in 99, actually, about mid-season, I said to the team, if we win the city championship, I'll shave my mustache off, right? Not thinking we didn't have a chance, I didn't think. Anyway, sure enough, the guys rose up and we won the city championship, and they made a big to-do about it here. Then a couple years later, I said, well, maybe I should my wife said, "Oh, maybe you should grow it back or whatever." So I started growing it back or whatever, and it was coming in really gray. I'm going, no, I think my mustache days are over. Anyway, Chris, thanks very much. I enjoyed working with Chris over the years, CTV, and while he was there for however many years, he certainly helped to promote high school sports. I'm a big proponent of promoting high school sports. I think youth and community sports are the best game in town. The LIT, I've often said at their press conferences, this is the premier sports event in the province. The intensity of the old gym in particular, with, as Chris mentioned, 1,500 people in a gym that should seat about 800, was absolutely nuts in the most positive way. So, I mean, it was a great, I don't know how, we were fortunate enough to win a couple, and thankfully they didn't show the video in the LIT of them beating us by 1 in 1990 in a great game. To tell you a little story here, the LIT that year, Luther was in the final. They had 2 7-foot kids playing, and every one of their starters went on to play university basketball. So this is in February of 1990. Crowd was nuts. Luther hadn't won since 86 or 84 or whatever when Bill Knudsen hit the big shot. Anyway, we're in the final, and my 5'10" guys are up against these 7-footers, and the place is absolutely bonkers in there in the pregame. So I actually kind of go in to see what was happening, and it was complete bedlam. I actually went to the back to the team room and said, we're not going to warm up. Like I said to my coaches, I said, we're going to say that there's whatever to the team, and we actually did not go out for the pregame warm-up because I thought my guys would be so intimidated by everything about this whole thing. Anyway, it worked out okay, and we lost by a point at the buzzer and so on, but from that point in time, the guys were saying, warm-up's overrated, coach. You don't have to go out there. But anyway, so thanks very much to the 3 or 4 tables of, I was very surprised and it was awesome. 3 or 4 tables of Balfour teachers and coaching alumni and parents and just a great turnout of long-time friends. So I really appreciate that on a special time like this, and it's awesome that you guys could make it in such a wonderful, pleasant night. At any rate, I also want to thank Mike O'Donnell here, who was instrumental. I got back from a little trip down south last spring, and he was instrumental in my nomination. He called me up, and we got together, and he said, I think I want to nominate you for this. And my first thought was like, really, am I worthy of this? And he assured me that he thought I was, he thought I was, etc. And so he put forward the thing, which is a considerable process. It's letters of reference and all sorts of things, so I really appreciate it. And now that my nomination is accepted, I'd like to formally thank the board members of the Hall for thinking that my efforts in the sport of basketball are worthy of an induction in this very distinguished group of Regina school and community sports leaders. I greatly respect the previous inductees, so to now be included with them is a bit surreal. As I looked at the 84 members before, not only that, I mean the members that are in it, I look around this room and I felt like I must have had interactions with 2/3 of the people in this room, as I'm sure most of you other in the Regina sporting community have, where you just over the years, if you've been here for a long time, you've worked together on various events or sports or Canada Games or what have you. It's a great community. As a side story here, when I coached in the 2001, I should tell my Regina kids here, you have a great opportunity to get in all of the big tournaments in Canada. Steve Earls and I coached in the 2001 Canada Games in London. We were talking to the Ontario boys basketball coaches. We were coaching the SAS boys. And I asked, so how many guys would come out for your team in Ontario for this, for the Canada Games? A little over 700. We had 27 boys come out for the team. 700. I go, well, how's that even physically possible? They go, well, we go to the 10 universities and we advertise, and 70 come out to each gym, and we try and pick a 12-man team. We lost to Ontario in overtime, coached by Dave Smart now, who was a long-time Carleton head coach at the time, in overtime. So I said to the guys, like, here you are in Saskatchewan, work at your game a little bit, put forth a little effort, and you can be in the same place as these guys are fighting among 700. So Regina is a great place to be involved in sport, and opportunities are endless. Frank called me in the summer. He called me, in the mid-tournament. We were running the Basketball Canada National Championship under 15, under 17 girls tournament out at the university this summer. And mid-afternoon, he calls me. And Frank was one of my all-time favorite students at Balfour, and not just because he's here. He was a great guy and great student, just a pleasure to teach. anyway, very humble. And of course, at the time, he was already being earmarked for junior hockey and a great career in hockey and so on. So he was very humble, but as you can see, a big kid with a great heart and an all-around good guy. Anyway, he phones me up, and when I first saw it, even though I knew Frank was like, Frank's a policeman. Like, what, Frank? What, Frank? Like, what's the trouble here? And you go, no. And then you run, oh yeah, so it's the High Regina Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations, you've been accepted, and so on. So it was great to have Frank give me the news, and it's great to be in the hall. At this time, Thanksgiving weekend and so on, I thought as goes with all these type of inductions and so on, you got to thank some people. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You got to thank some people that were special in your life and your basketball career. First and foremost, my wife Brenda. I'd like to thank my loving partner in all of this, my wife Brenda. None of my involvement would have taken place if she wasn't totally supportive of my time and efforts for the past 40-plus years. I think everyone that has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and each and every one of you tonight would agree that without their spouse great support, they could just not have been so involved in sport. Spouses make sacrifices so that their partners can spend so much time coaching and organizing. I'd like at this time to please join me in applauding my wife Brenda, along with very supportive spouses gathered here. If she's tearing up right now, that's okay. Chris had her tearing up in the opening dialogue, so she's just like that. At any rate, I'd also like, even though this is about me, my children inspired me to continue coaching, and they're here tonight. My daughter Ashley and my son Brad I'd like to thank them for being great kids and now adults, and for their great devotion to basketball and sports in general. They really helped to inspire my coaching career. After his Balfour teams won 3 city high school championships, Brad went on to follow his dad and become an excellent player for the U of R Cougars basketball team. Ashley was on 4 high school city championship basketball teams at Balfour, and on 1 high school softball championship team coached by Karen Thull. I had the pleasure of coaching with Karen that year. Karen's a fantastic coach, and she showed me that the soft-spoken coaching approach can actually work to city championships. So I tried to take that to heart. Ashley accepted a scholarship for basketball and softball at Dawson College in Montana, where in her first year she was named a junior college All-American as softball pitcher. My son sits around with all his buddies, and they talk, big time about their athletics. I said, "Oh, really? Any of you All-Americans, you boys? Any of you? Anybody? And then that sort of shuts them up for about 10 seconds. Anyway, I'm very proud of both of the outstanding individuals that they've grown up to become. I was also very proud to see Brad return to coach the Balfour Junior Boys and lead them to 3 city championships in 4 years. I'm so happy that our 2 children are very interested in sports on a year-round basis. Basketball and sports in general have been a major part of our lives. We've met hundreds of people through involvement in sport, some who have chosen to attend tonight, and I greatly appreciate you being here. Ever wonder how you got involved in sport, regardless of what sport? You ever think back, now you've been involved for anywhere from 10 to 20 to 40 to 50 years. You think back, how did I get so involved in this game? Like, where did that happen? I was born in a small town in central Manitoba, actually, in the Ukrainian-Canadian belt there north of Dauphin. And the elementary school didn't have a gym, so let alone basketball hoops. So anyway, when I came to Regina here in 1963, I was at McLeod and Argyle schools, and Argyle had a team, and we got introduced to it there. Then the next year I went to Sheldon, and unfortunately my high school career experience didn't go well. I used to tell all my students here that we got to Sheldon, and about 70 guys would try out for the team at Sheldon because they had a big high-profile program. For the grade 9 and 10 only boys, 70 boys would come out for a 12-man team. So I came out for that team, and I didn't know basketball from cricket. I played, and I know the ball goes through the rim, but I didn't know anything about the game. And my parents were very sports-minded. They loved the Blue Jays and the Riders and so on, but they didn't know anything about basketball. So I was strictly on my own. I'm an only child, so no older brothers, nobody to drag me out there and show me what it's about. Anyway, we go out to this first tryout, and we warm up for a bit, 30 seconds, or we go into the start of the tryout. The coaches call us in and say, line up on the sideline. So we did, and the coaches at that time said, listen, we've seen you, in phys ed class, and I know it's only 30 seconds into the first practice, but I'm sorry, and then just went down the line and said, your cut, you stay, your cut. And he pointed at me, your cut, and I said to my guy beside me, what did he say? I think he said your cut. Oh, okay. So I had my brand new canvas Converse Chuck Taylor runners, and I think I probably phoned my mother or father, who had just gotten home from dropping me off, and said, oh, come on back, my basketball career's over here. So I did. I changed out and I thought about what other sporting pursuit I would have. But anyway, in grade 10 I went out again, and a guy by the name of Jerry Borland, who you might know, who's a longtime teacher and principal in the city, he was a recent graduate of Sheldon, and he somehow, I don't know what he saw in me, but I stuck on the team. I wasn't even really that tall at that point in time, still knowing nothing really about the game. But anyway, if it were not for him seeing something in me and putting me on the team, I might have had a completely different career path, and who knows, I could be farming in northern Manitoba right now. But luckily it didn't turn out that way. A couple of years later I joined up with, after I'd been in the junior team for grade 10, 11 with Ray Jacoby, who had been on the senior team for all 4 years. He was a hotshot skilled player of the Jacoby family in Regina, basketball and tennis family, and we managed to win a city championship. Ray and I went on and played 4 more years of university with the Cougars, and 25 more years of senior men's basketball. Ray coached, went back and coached. He was a teacher coach at Sheldon, and I was at Belfort for all those years. We've had a great time. I really appreciate Ray and Nancy being here tonight. They're great friends of ours, and although I'm winning the battle of hair right now over Ray, I attribute that. I tell him it's just good, clean living, and other than that, he beats me up in the tennis court, and so on and so forth. I mentioned lastly here that Frank, we were on this locker talk show here taping last week, and I mentioned to Frank, and I was there in the waiting room, that some of the winters I had were pretty busy, and so I was telling him, I said, besides coaching this is in the past year, Balfour Senior Boys, plus leading the organization of 3 annual Balfour basketball tournaments, coaching my children's RCBA and elementary school teams, playing on 2 men's basketball teams. Some winters that meant being in the gym for over 120 games, not to mention the team practices. In addition to 10 years, for 10 years, my brother-in-law, Ron Cherkis, and I have organized 100 boys to bus down to the Montana State Summer Basketball Camp. Those are great trips, and with boys from all over Regina. I want to thank Ron and the Cherkis family for all their support over the years. It's been great. In my spare time, as Chris mentioned, for 7 of those years I served as the president of the Regina High School Association and Basketball Saskatchewan, some years both at the same time. You know, what's spare time? Like, how am I still married? I don't know how that happened. But anyway, it was busy. Frank said, you got to use that in your speech. That's just crazy talk. I'd like to also thank, as I conclude here, my assistants, longtime assistants here, Scott Babcock, Rob Thompson, Spence Burgess, Mick Panko and son Brad, and Tanner Brightman, who you saw in the Luther video here. He's interning over at Luther right now. Tanner's already at a young age one of Saskatchewan's top coaches, and the current senior boys coach at Balfour. These guys are all great coaches, with very knowledgeable and enthusiastic, who brought a lot of experience and insight to the gym, and in many cases made me look good with their behind-the-scenes decisions and team preparation. Oh, and of course, there's one more longtime assistance coach, my wife Brenda, whose post-game hindsight analysis of around 1,400 high school basketball games during our car rides home actually became more and more intuitive as the years went by. Not that they weren't in the early years, dear, but many times I actually offered her a seat on the bench for our next game, but she always declined the opportunity. But you know what? I always did appreciate her genuine interest in the team, and it's a lot better that way than the other. I'd also, here in attendance, is thanking our coaches. In fact, I'd like to have the other 3 Balfour coaches that stand up. Wendy Bolesky and Les Schmidt and Spence Burgess. Please stand up for a second here. Oh, Wendy. Wendy has provided great leadership and excellent coaching of Balfour girls for 32 years and was a great influence in my time there. We coached the senior teams at Balfour for 26 years. These 3 and myself coached at Balfour. I think this is a North American record. There's no way I've ever known. 22 years. Well, Wendy and I was 26 years. The 4 of us coached at Balfour for 22 years. I don't know of any other high school in Canada that would be even close. I mean, typically you bring in a couple of junior coaches, they coach for a year and they're gone, and people are on the move and so on. But 22 years is outstanding. It meant that our program was obviously very strong, and these are knowledgeable. So thank you very much, guys. It was a great ride, and we have many great memories. Basketball is a great sport. I mean, everyone has their favorites, and I always say, if you've got grandchildren or children that are looking to get involved in a sport, here you've got a low-cost sport. It's school-related. It's played indoors and outdoors. Low collision, no really, minimal, in the concussion world, minimal concussion business. Just a lifelong sport and so on. I mean, it's just a great game, and I'm so happy that I got involved with it for the past 47 years. It's something that I would direct any young person to be involved in. In closing, thank you to everyone who's been a part of my family's great ride with basketball in this city. My experience with basketball may not be over as I continue to get some requests to help out with tournaments and instructional camps, and who knows, I might decide to coach again. However, this event brings a bit of closure to my first 47 years in the sport of basketball, and again, I thank everyone on the Regina Hall Committee for the honor, all the student athletes that I've had the pleasure of coaching, and everyone who has come to this evening in support of my induction. The time we have spent together around the sport will hopefully continue to provide great memories for all of us for the rest of our lives. Thanks very much.
And our final inductee into the 2016 Regina Sports Hall of Fame induction class this evening